What's up? Can y'all see me? Got all this hair and maybe not enough lighting. Well, welcome everybody. So I have for you tonight another installment of Healing from Divorce. This is part 5. And tonight I want to talk about talking to your children and supporting them because that is extremely important. Let me make sure my volume is good here. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to get started. So if you've been following me or catching the lives that I've been doing on Thursday nights, I have been talking about healing from divorce as I went through divorce last year and has been finalized. I have the gift of reflection. And so the time now to look back and to hopefully do something that would help somebody else. And so that's where I'm coming from, just speaking from the heart. So let's just jump in. Um, Divorce is difficult enough as it is, but when you have children involved, of course, it makes it much harder, as you know, it can with anything that you're doing. When children are involved, you have to handle the situation with a whole lot of care. And that is hard to do when you are reeling, from whatever has just happened, however it just occurred, and you're going through a divorce and you might not be okay, you might need help yourself, and then you find, oh my gosh, what about the children? I need to be there for them too. And so it can be really difficult um to manage. And so that's why I want to just talk about it tonight and just talk openly. And if you have questions or comments, put them in the chat. I want it to be a dialogue. As always, I don't have all the answers, but I love engaging with you. And so if we can help each other, then that's a good thing. But yeah, so you basically could be, really struggling with your divorce, and because it is a very emotional thing, right? It's really tough to go through something like this, second only to the grief of losing someone, like through death. So divorce is way up there as far as stress. And then you have your children to consider. How do you do that? How do you even begin to talk to them and to try to get them to understand what has happened? Basically, the family is breaking up. And so I have some things that I hope, you can think about, consider, and hopefully they'll help you. So the first thing to know is you might not have support from outside. And honestly, at this point, you really don't want to introduce too many other people into what's going on. You want to be the one to talk to your kids and tell them, hey, this is what has happened, this is what's going on with mom and daddy, or depending on their ages, however you refer to yourself, but you need to be upfront with them. But before you do that, knowing that you want to be the one to talk to them, I suggest you understand that no matter their age, it doesn't matter if they're 2 years old, it doesn't matter if they are 42 years old, they are going to be affected by your separation and divorce. They're going to be affected. It doesn't matter. Now there are a lot of people that say, well, it could be good for the kids if there's been a lot of fighting and bickering and all of that. Yes, there are some upsides to it, definitely. Like when that has stopped and the children feel safer. Yes, that's something to consider. However, there's still the kind of shock of separating the family, of breaking the family up. And it's hard not to look at it that way. And it's hard not to experience it as a loss. And so even children know when, something is lost, and they will go through grief. And so I just want to put that out there, because a lot of the time people don't feel like, either they're too young and they're not really going to get it. They just know that something's changed, or either they are grown and it won't matter to them. But it matters to all children. It does. And if they're grown, it can actually shape how they feel about their marriages, if they're married or if they were hoping to get married. And so just want to make sure you understand that there will be an impact. And it doesn't matter how resilient you think your child is, there will be an impact. So come to the conversation with that in mind. So, with that in mind, I think the best way to approach talking to them is to try to make the conversation as easy as you can for them. So, you want to think about the children in at this time, and that means you have to be on the back burner. This is not a time to put yourself first. This is a time to really focus on them and what they need. So that means when, like in other times of chaos and other times of uncertainty, your children are looking to you to lead and to guide. And that's going to be the same thing when you're going through divorce. It doesn't really matter that it's a divorce. They're still going to look to you for that leadership, for that guidance, for that reassurance, for those next steps. And so you're going to have to put your feelings aside for a little bit. You can't like fall apart and, cry and roll when you're trying to explain to them what is happening, because you're going to need to be strong for them. And so I don't know, other people may see it differently, but this is my opinion and I feel it strongly. You need to put your emotions as much as you can on the back burner so that you can talk to the children, so that you can listen to them, be available for their questions, and so that you can guide them with the next step like a parent should. Okay, so that's what this is about. It's about parenting in any situation, even divorce. So you want to make the talking to them as easy as possible. The One of the biggest things you can do to help the conversation be a little easier for them is to speak to your spouse ahead of time. That means you guys should decide like how you want to talk to them. Is it going to be both of you? Um, are you going to do it over dinner? We talk about everything over dinner at our house, and so it was going to be like a after dinner talk for us for sure. But if you don't have like a set time when you typically talk about things, are you going to schedule it so that they know what's going on? So you need to discuss those things, and you also need to talk to your spouse about how it's going to be relayed, because that's very important. Like who's going to speak first? In my case, my husband won't ask for a divorce, so I felt it more appropriate for him to explain to the kids how he was feeling, like where he was coming from. So I wanted him to talk because there's no way I could explain it for him. And so that's just giving you an example. And so it would be good if you can talk to each other, if you're able to communicate civilly and you're not going to get upset and angry. Talk about how you want to address this together with the kids. Now, if they're, like I said, if they're older, that's going to dictate, their age is going to dictate how you do it. But you need to have the talk with each other beforehand, to say how it's going to go. And if you feel like, well, they're grown, like your child is 30 and you don't need to check in or whatever, then that is understandable. But I think definitely for small children, it makes sense to discuss it first. Okay. And so the next thing I think would be really helpful is to understand that there's going to be some reaction. And so for small kids, although they might not understand fully, they may be seem aloof to you because they just really don't get it. And you're trying to talk to them and explain to them. But you'd be surprised at how much kids do understand and how much they observe. So come to the conversation expecting them to have some kind of feelings, to show some emotion, to react in some kind of way so that you're not shocked that, oh my goodness, they could possibly feel like this, so that you're not telling yourself, oh, this is going to be, so much easier, or, I got this. You need to make sure that you understand that they have a reaction and they have a right to the reaction. And because, it's likely, because you're healing from divorce, it's your partner that's asked for a divorce, likely. That could be not your case, but that's my case. And so just because you might not be the one that asked for the divorce doesn't mean that the kids are going to feel like, oh, so you're off the hook. So understand that they may have feelings for both of you. They may place blame, but your job is to make sure, even if they're placing blame, that they don't blame themselves. So you have to make sure that they know above all how loved they are, how wanted they are, how much you're going to take care of them, and that under no circumstances is this divorce their fault, because it couldn't possibly be. And so you need to make sure they understand that it is not their fault, that this is, mommy and daddy, or this is two grown people that couldn't see eye to eye, couldn't make it work. And you need to understand that, but also be prepared for the backlash, for the things that can be said, because I don't think that, in some cases that people are prepared. Kids can be brutal anyway. They can be brutal anyway because they don't always have a filter. But when they're hurting, yeah, you need to be prepared. So, don't be shocked at what happens. Be open to it. And I'm not talking about, depending on their age, like disrespect and stuff like that. I'm just saying be understanding, because this is something that, it really, it hurts. And for a child to have to manage it is difficult. And that's where you come in as the adult to support them. Okay. All right. So the next thing I would say to do is, in the case of little kids, I just want to say this: if you feel like you really need support when telling them because of their age, and or that they have a fragile state of mind, or whatever the issue is, there's nothing wrong with asking for help. I remember when my mother died, and my brother was 9 years old, and I was gonna eventually take custody of him, all of that. I did not know how to tell him, even though he understood that she was sick and she had been battling breast cancer. I didn't know how to tell him. And so I remember talking to his counselor at school, and I had her in the room. We set it all up so that I would have the support. And again, I was young back then, like in my 20s, but I wanted to make sure I had the support and I knew how to talk to him. And I didn't have all those tools, and I didn't have all that language to tell him, and I wasn't sure what to do. And so it's not a problem with arranging to have help from someone that you trust, someone that will be able to, even hold the kids if they don't feel like you hugging them, if they don't feel like coming to you because you've just hurt them so much. Think about it in that way and provide them with whatever it is that you feel like they would benefit from. And don't think about it like, okay, I'm not equipped to handle my own children. Don't look at it like that. Look at it like, what do you feel like they need? What would make it easier to support them? And do that. Okay, so the next thing I would say, and that also includes an attorney. I meant to mention that. And so, like, because age dictates things for children that are under 18, when you are getting divorced, you must have like a custody and what do they call it? Like, it's like the co-parenting plan has to be in place, like for visitation and all your shared parenting, all of that has to be in place before your divorce. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to go to court to do that, because you can include it in your separation agreement if you can get your attorney to write it up. But that may be something that you need to have prepared in case your children have questions like, what's going to happen. You might want to consult the attorney in that case, because you need that language written up. It has to be legally drawn up so that the judge can look at it when it's time for the divorce. So that's just something else to think about. So the counselor, the therapist, the attorney, get them involved if you need to before you have the talk. Okay. The next thing is when you start talking, when you are talking to them and explaining to them, here's what happened, we're not going to be together. I want you of course we're preparing, so I want you to go there in the moment and understand how emotional you might be. And I want you to talk to yourself right now and tell yourself, do not act a fool, do not crash out, do not go after your spouse. Try to keep that stuff managed and under control so that the kids are not further traumatized. Because yes, anything can be said. You can be sitting there listening to the other person tell the children, how they're feeling, and it's like something you've never heard before, or it's shocking to you. try to keep yourself under control for the sake of the kids, because this is a situation that's already heartbreaking. You don't want to introduce emotions or actions that are going to make it more traumatizing for them. Y'all don't want to get to fighting in front of them, things like that. And even if they've been hearing fights or seeing fights, it doesn't mean that it's okay. And then, like, for my children, they had no idea what was going on because I didn't know what was going on. It was a shock to all of us. You know, Obviously my ex-husband knew what he wanted to do, but it was hard for them to understand. And so I think, had I, like, flipped the table over or something like that, it would not have gone well because they were very emotional. And so just want to be mindful of your own behavior. Um, all right. So going more in detail about having the next steps ready, that is so crucial to kids because they are going to still look to you to parent. It doesn't matter what the situation is. It doesn't matter. And even if they're angry at you in the moment as you're discussing it with them, still you need to be prepared for, like, okay, so here's what we're going to do next, because sometimes that can be very comforting to a child. Like when they know that you have thought things out. And if you already have the custody plan, like I said, if they're younger and you can talk a little bit about that with them, I think that's good, so that they understand that both parents are going to be there for them. And I think it's also important for them to know that they're not going to not see a parent. I know that there are a lot of cases where parents don't agree, and they don't want the one parent doesn't want the kids to be with the spouse or whatever. There's fighting, there's reasons, but I don't think that there is any reason for you not to let your spouse continue to be in your child's life because it's their child or their stepchild or whatever, unless it is a safety issue. Like if it's abusive, it can be emotional or physical. If it's any kind of abuse, okay, then that's a reason to go to the judge, and that's a reason to seek sole custody. Otherwise, it's really important for children to continue to have both of you. It really is. You can't be everything to them. And it's not really even fair. You should want the child to continue to have that relationship with their mother or father. And so it is imperative that you look at it from their perspective and not, like, what it feels like to you, because it's easy to be separated and say, well, I'm fine if I don't ever see my ex-spouse again or whatever, but your child won't feel like that. And so you need to allow them to have that relationship and do everything that you can to encourage it. And so that is along the lines of those next steps of being prepared to talk to them about, how things are going to be different, but the love for them is not going to change. The time spent with them is not going to change. It'll change in the sense of maybe they're at one house or the other, or, they're different days, but it's not going to change in general. And then I have older kids, so my kids are um well, still one teenager, but they're in college. And so they pick and choose when they want to see whoever they want to see or how they want to do things. They've been doing this for some time. And so when the onus is on them, that's one way to look at it. But as a parent, it's always our responsibility to build that relationship with the child. So unless they're telling you they don't want to talk to you and they want to go no contact, um, assume that they want a relationship with you, even if they're struggling a little bit based on you just dropping this bomb on them and telling them that you're getting a divorce. Even if they, seem angry, I want you to stay in there and understand that you're a parent, and under no circumstances are you to walk away. Under no circumstances are you to get your feelings hurt and be like, well, I'm not talking to you, because that's not what we do with children. They didn't ask to come here. And so it's going to always be your job to go after them, to love them down, to hold it down for them, even in divorce. So I'm going to make myself clear with that. Um, okay, so the next thing is, understand that you are going to have to stand in the gap for them right now. So in some cases where you might have shared what's going on, between you and your partner, and some cases where you might not have, don't think that family is going to understand and friends are going to all understand. They might ask about the kids and be like, well, how are they doing? But don't be surprised if they're not like calling and checking and trying to talk to them, because for some reason people just really don't understand how the children are in the middle. Like the people that are on the outside. I don't mean you two that are getting divorced. I mean the people on the outside. They don't seem, in my opinion, they don't seem to understand how these children are caught in the middle and how they're hurting. And so sometimes I don't even think to check on them or to worry about them. And so if in your case, if in your family, if in your circle, you don't have somebody that can help you to check in with the kids, understand that that's a time where you might want to, make sure they have therapy, even if they're grown. Make sure that they're talking to somebody. Make sure that they have a friend they can lean on. But you want to, go a step further to make sure mentally that they are shored up, to make sure that they have outlets, things like that. And that, it can't always be fun, fun, fun all the time to keep their mind off of it. It needs to be balanced. And so, as the parent, while you're hurting, I know you are still going to have to stand in the gap and parent. You're still going to have to find the strength from somewhere, wherever you draw it from. But you're going to have to find just a little bit to make sure that they are good. That doesn't mean you're gonna have to go hard like every moment of the day, but just spend some time being intentional about thinking about, okay, you know, do I need to set up like a family therapy session? Like, what do I need to do that would make this easier for them? And at the same time, you're going to realize that while you care for the kids, while you do this for them, it is going to make it easier for you, because that will be one less stressor as you go through everything that you're going to have to go through to get through this divorce. So when the kids are progressing, is what I'll call it, because they're not going to necessarily be okay right in the beginning. And no matter how resilient they are, because people are like, oh, little kids, they're resilient, they bounce back, and this is better for them. There's not the fighting. Regardless of that, it still takes everybody time to heal. And kids aren't all the same. So make sure that you hold time and space for them, give them what they need. And yes, there are gonna be some times when after you've done that hard day, you have to go fall down, you have to go cry. It's okay. It's okay. I'm not saying you can't do it in front of them. I'm just saying you can't fall apart to the point where you're not functioning, because they still need you. All right. Um, And then the next thing I would say is to check in with them as time goes on. So I do this. I'll use my kids for example, because they are young adults and they are in college. They don't always share, and especially my boy. Like they don't always talk. They may have other ways that they express themselves, but it's nothing wrong with you as the parent going to them and checking on them. Don't assume just because they're not talking, or just because they're not verbalizing something, or because they're not acting out, or whatever it is, that they're okay. Do a check-in with them and gauge how they're feeling. And also let them know. Like for me, when everything was happening, the kids had just gone to school. Let them know what resources are available. So if they need to go on their own, if they need to go to the school counselor, or if they need to, go to the counselor on campus, it's nothing wrong with having those things set up. It's nothing wrong with telling people, hey, this is what's going on. I know there's shame involved in divorce, and I talked about that in one of the lives, the previous ones that I've done. There's shame involved in it, but this is not a time to let that stop you. I know how society looks at us when we fail at a marriage, when we failed at anything. But you fail, you fall down, you get up, you learn, and you can love harder and you can love better the next time. So don't let that stop you from getting the help that you need for your children. And then the last thing I would say is to always be accountable. Be accountable and be dependable to those kids, even the adult ones. I just was hearing about somebody who their children are grown, like in their 30s and 40s, and the parents divorced. And it can be very hard even at that time. But if they want to call you up, or if they just want to talk to you, let them have that time. And understand that you need to do that for them, because sometimes even if they don't know what to say. Just having your attention can be comforting to them. And the other thing I want to say, and this is the last thing, remember in all of this, as painful as it is and as difficult as it is to go through divorce, do your very best not to rip, berate, and talk about the other parent in their absence. Don't do it to their face when the kids are around, and don't do it in their absence, because what you say and do can make that relationship or break that relationship for your child. And their relationship is honestly not your concern. Not unless it's like I said, it's unsafe. That's different. But it's not your business. You should want them to build that. And so be very careful how you talk to them. And even in the pain that the other person may have caused you, right? I know that that pain is real, and they could really be at fault for stuff. You know, people do be out here cheating and doing all kinds of things and harming people or not communicating and thinking that that's okay. People do stuff. So I get that. However, you have to be sensitive to your child. You have to understand that just because it hurts you, and just because that is the truth and the facts that happen, doesn't mean that the child can handle it. Doesn't mean that they can hear it and be okay. Like even if it's gospel, or even if they saw part of it, it doesn't mean that they want it reiterated or that they can bear it, because both of you guys are their parents and they love you both. They love you both. And so it is very hard for them to have to feel that. And you definitely do not want them to take a side in this. You don't. And that's some grown people stuff. That's some mature stuff. But you don't want them to take a side. Even if they try to take a side, do your best not to allow it, so that they can have both of you for the duration. For as long as God allows you to live, you want them to have both of you, even if that's separately. Okay. So that's where I'm coming from tonight. That's what I have for you. If you have questions, hit me up. Let me know. I'm here. I will be back next week. I have so much that we could talk about. So if you have thoughts, or you want me to talk about certain topics, you can send me a note. You can leave me a comment, and I will be happy to talk about it. But I do have some ideas for what we can cover coming up, and so I will see you next week.